Night has settled over this world like a held breath. The bustle of the day has faded, leaving only the soft cadence of work that never truly stops. Tonight, we find ourselves drawn to the Survey Corps equipment repair room. Settle into the stillness. Let your bed hold you softly. Let your thoughts grow quiet and distant. Let the last of your effort melt away. This is canon and calm. Let us begin. The stone walls of the workshop hold the chill of the late hour, keeping the secrets of the Survey Corps beneath the foundations of the barracks. Here, in the quiet hours, the clamor of the training grounds is a distant memory, replaced by the soft scratch of a file against steel. The omnidirectional mobility gear lies disassembled before me, its copper pipes and steel casings reflecting the amber glow of the oil lamps. Each piece is a puzzle of engineering built to defy gravity, yet prone to the wear of the wind and the grit of the forest. I pick up a blade, its edge notched from a recent expedition beyond the walls. The steel is cold, a stark reminder of the frozen silence that exists outside our gates, where the only noise is the wind through the trees. With a steady hand, I guide the whetstone along the length of the metal, creating a slow, methodical pulse of friction. The friction generates a faint warmth, a tiny spark of heat in a room that feels forgotten by the sun. There is a specific weight to this equipment, a density that speaks of the lives it has carried through the canopy. I check the pressure valves, listening for the faintest hiss of escaping gas, a whisper that could mean the difference between flight and a fall. The atmosphere of the room is thick with the scent of lubricating oil and old leather. It is a comforting smell, the scent of maintenance, of preparation, and of the mundane labor that supports the extraordinary. I reach for a spool of wire, the thin, high-tensile cable spooling out with a metallic trill. It is surprisingly light, yet strong enough to support the full weight of a soldier as they swing through the shadows of the giant trees. Looking at the spool, I see the slight fraying near the anchor point, a sign of a close call in the field. I cut away the damaged section with precision, ensuring the new connection is as secure as the walls themselves. Outside, the moon casts a pale light over the Trost district, but here the only illumination comes from the flickering wicks. The shadows dance across the floor, stretching and shrinking as the lanterns sway in the slight draft from the hallway. I find a small canister, its exterior dented by an impact I can only imagine. I run my fingers over the bruised metal, wondering if the soldier who wore it returned with stories, or if they returned at all. Every piece of gear has a history etched into the scratches and the stains of the leather straps. I scrub at a patch of dried mud, the earth of the outer territories falling away to reveal the sturdy hide beneath. This leather comes from the finest cattle within wall rows, treated to withstand the tension of the gas bursts. It feels supple in my hands, a natural contrast to the cold, unyielding iron of the gear mechanisms. I apply a fresh coat of oil to the trigger housing, watching the liquid bead and spread across the face of the metal. It moves like a slow tide, filling the microscopic gaps and ensuring the gears will turn without hesitation. There is a measure to this work, a cycle of cleaning and fixing that keeps the mind grounded. In the stillness of the evening, the small tasks become a form of meditation, a way to process the weight of our situation. The ledger on the desk remains open, its pages filled with the inventory of 1,000 small parts. I record the replacement of the valve. my pen scratching against the parchment in the same cadence as the clock on the wall. Time feels different down here, away from the sun and the frantic pace of the day. The hours stretch out, long and thin, like the wires I'm winding back into their housings. I pick up a small copper washer, no larger than a coin, yet essential for the seal of the gas line. It is perfectly circular, a tiny triumph of manufacturing in a landscape that often feels chaotic and broken. I place the washer into its seat, feeling the satisfying click as it finds its home. It is a small victory, one of many tonight, as I slowly piece the equipment back together. A draft stirs the hanging cloaks near the door, the green fabric swaying like the leaves of the forest. The embroidered wings of freedom seem to flutter in the half-light, a symbol of a dream that persists even in the dimness. I pause for a moment, resting my hands on the workbench, and listen to the silence of the barracks above. The soldiers are sleeping, dreaming of a world without walls, while I work to ensure they have the tools to find it. The hiss of a cooling lamp marks the passage of another hour, the metal contracting as the flame burns low. I reach for the oil can to refill the reservoir, the golden liquid pouring in a smooth, silent stream. There is a grace in these machines, a beauty in their function that is often overlooked in the heat of battle. Here, in the quiet, I can appreciate the elegance of the pistons and the strength of the springs. I find a set of hand grips, the wood worn smooth by the constant pressure of a soldier's palms. I can see the indentations of fingers, a ghost of the grip that held on for dear life during a high-speed maneuver. I sand down a small splinter on the handle, making it smooth once more, ensuring no distraction will hinder the wearer. It is a minor detail, but in our setting, details are the foundation of survival. The floorboards creak as I shift my weight, a familiar note in the symphony of the workshop. The building is old, its timber seasoned by decades of service to the military, much like the gear I repair. I look at the map pinned to the wall, its edges curling in the dampness of the basement. The lines of the walls are drawn in bold ink, but the space beyond is a blur of sketches and question marks. My task is to ensure the gear can navigate those question marks, to provide the mobility needed to explore the unknown. It is a quiet responsibility, one that I carry with a steady pulse and a focused eye. I pick up a small file to smooth out a burr on a gear tooth, the sound a sharp, rhythmic chirp in the stillness. Each stroke removes a tiny cloud of iron dust, which glitters like dark sand on the workbench. I wipe the dust away with a rag, the cloth turning grey with the remnants of the machine. The work is messy, but there is a cleanliness in the result, a sense of order restored to a broken thing. The evening air is cooling, the breath of the stone walls becoming more noticeable as the night deepens. I pull my collar tighter, the wool of my uniform a familiar comfort against the subterranean chill. I examine a set of grappling hooks, their 3 prongs sharp and ready to bite into the bark of a Titan-sized tree. I test the spring tension, the metal snapping back with a sharp, resonant thud that echoes off the ceiling. It is a strong sound, a note of reliability in an uncertain landscape. I check the secondary hook, ensuring the pivot moves freely and the locking pin is secure. I find a small box of copper rivets, their surfaces shining like buried treasure in the lantern light. I select one, placing it into the hole of a leather strap, and hammering it home with a single, precise strike. The hammer makes a dull, weighted thud, a sound that feels final and certain. The strap is now whole again, ready to be buckled around a soldier's thigh and tightened for the jump. I move to the back of the room, where the spare gas cylinders are stored in wooden crates. They are stacked like cordwood, their heavy iron shells cold to the touch and smelling of pressurized minerals. I check the seals on the entire row, my fingers moving by habit and memory through the familiar shapes. Each cylinder is a reservoir of potential energy, a breath of wind held captive in a metal bottle. Returning to the bench, I see the first set of gear is nearly complete, its components gleaming and ready for reassembly. I begin to fit the outer casing back over the internal clockwork, the metal sliding into place with a series of soft clicks. It is a satisfying moment, seeing the chaotic pile of parts transform back into a functional tool. The gear looks sturdy and dependable, a silent partner for the soldier who will soon claim it. I set the completed unit aside and reach for the next one, a set that looks particularly weathered by the elements. The leather is salt-stained, perhaps from the sweat of a long patrol or the mist of a waterfall. I begin the process again, the cadence of the work carrying me forward through the quiet hours. There is no hurry, only the requirement of perfection, for a single mistake here could lead to a tragedy elsewhere. The lanterns are burning lower now, the light turning a deeper shade of orange as the oil nears the end of the wick. I do not mind the dimness, for my hands know the gear as well as they know their own shape. I can feel the tension in a spring by touch alone, sensing the point where it might snap or the place where it needs a drop of oil. It is a language of metal and pressure, spoken in the silence of the repair room. As the first hint of pre-dawn light begins to touch the high window, I realize how much has been accomplished in the dark. The row of repaired gear stands as a testament to the night's labor, a silent guard awaiting the morning. The transition from the late hour to the early morning is subtle, marked only by the shifting of the shadows and the fading of the stars. The workshop remains a sanctuary of focus, a place where the world's troubles are reduced to the size of a copper screw. I take a final look at the workbench, ensuring every tool is in its place and every scrap of metal has been cleared away. The order of the room reflects the readiness of the equipment and necessary discipline in our line of work. I pick up my cooling mug of tea, the liquid long since gone cold, but the ritual of the sip remains. It is the signal that the shift is nearing its end and the rest of the world will soon wake to the sound of bells. The gear is ready for the morning inspection, the blades sharpened and the canisters filled to their limit. I have done my part to ensure the Survey Corps can take flight once more when the sun rises over the wall. I extinguish the lanterns one by one, the room falling into a soft, natural grey as the morning light takes over. The transition is peaceful, a gentle handoff from the labor of the evening to the duties of the day. I leave the workshop, the heavy wooden door clicking shut behind me, the sound echoing through the empty corridor. My footsteps are light on the stone, the fatigue of the night balanced by the satisfaction of a job well done. The barracks are beginning to stir, the first sounds of boots on floorboards drifting down from the levels above. I walk toward the stairs, my mind already drifting toward the quiet of a well-earned sleep, while the gear I fixed waits for the hands that will carry it into the sky. The secondary chamber, where we house the gas compression units, is a place of perpetual chill, even in the height of the summer months. The stone walls are thicker here, reinforced to contain the volatile energy that allows our soldiers to defy gravity. I step across the threshold, the soles of my boots making a dull, muffled note against the damp floor. Row after row of empty canisters wait in the amber glow of the wall-mounted lamps, their exteriors dull and devoid of the pressure that gives them purpose. I pick one up, the density of the hollow steel familiar in my palms, and inspect the threading of the intake valve. It must be perfect, for the slightest leak in the heat of battle is a death sentence, whispered in the hiss of escaping vapor. I move to the primary distribution manifold, a complex weave of copper pipes and brass fittings that dominates the far wall. The metal is polished by years of hands turning these same wheels, the patina of oil and effort visible in the soft light. I reach for the main lever, my fingers finding the worn grooves, and pull it downward with a steady, deliberate motion. A low groan of metal meeting metal echoes through the room, followed by the steady pulse of the pumps deep within the basement levels. The vibration travels through the floor, a subtle tremble that I can feel in the marrow of my bones. It is the heartbeat of the survey corps, the secret strength hidden within the stone of the walls. I connect the first canister to the line, the click of the coupling sharp and clear in the quiet. There is a specific tension required, a balance between a secure seal and the ease of removal that a soldier needs in the field. I tighten the fitting by a quarter turn, my eyes fixed on the needle of the pressure gauge as it begins its slow upward climb. The needle moves with a hesitant grace, ticking past the marks that denote the safety limits of the steel. I watch it closely, for the gas is a fickle thing, expanding and contracting with the temperature of the atmosphere. In these late hours, the cold makes the process more stable, allowing for a denser fill that will last a few minutes longer in the sky. While the first unit fills, I turn my attention to the spare triggers, the intricate mechanisms that control the flow of gas to the omnidirectional gear. They are masterpieces of clockwork and spring steel, requiring a delicate touch to maintain. I lay them out on a clean cloth, the metal gleaming like silver under the flickering lamp. Each trigger must respond to the lightest pressure, yet remain firm enough to avoid accidental discharge during a hard landing. I use a small brush to clear away the microscopic fragments of debris that accumulate within the housing, the bristles catching on the tiny teeth of the gears. It is a meditative task, one that demands my full focus and a steady hand. I think of the soldiers who will carry these triggers into the unknown, their lives dependent on the precision of my work. They are often young, with hands that shake after a long day of training, and my job is to ensure their equipment never fails them. The responsibility is a quiet weight, one that I carry with a sense of pride and a measure of sorrow. The first canister reaches its capacity, the needle resting exactly on the red line that marks the limit. I close the valve, the hiss of the gas cutting off abruptly, leaving only the sound of my own breath in the stillness. I disconnect the cylinder, the metal now warm to the touch, from the friction of the compressed molecules within. I set the filled canister aside, marking it with a small chalk strike to indicate it is ready for the morning inspection. There are 48 more to go. A long journey through the small hours that will take me until the first light of dawn. I do not mind the duration, for the solitude of the bay offers a peace that is hard to find in the crowded barracks. I move to the next station, where the replacement blades are stored in long wooden crates. These are the sharpest edges known to humanity, forged in the industrial city with techniques that are guarded as closely as the secrets of the walls. I lift one from its bed of straw, the blade singing as it slides out, a high, clear tone that lingers in the rafters. The steel is etched with a pattern of fine lines, a result of the folding process that gives the blade its strength and flexibility. I run a stone along the edge, not to sharpen it, for it is already lethal, but to check for any microscopic burrs that might catch during a strike. The slurry of oil and stone dust forms a grey paste, which I wipe away with a piece of soft leather. This blade will likely only last for a single engagement, its edge dulled by the thick hide of a titan or shattered by a misplaced blow against a stone building. It is a temporary tool for a permanent struggle, a paradox of our existence within these 3 circles of stone. I place the blade in a new scabbard, the fit tight and secure, ready to be strapped to a soldier's hip. The atmosphere in the bay is thick with the scent of oil, metal, and the faint ozone-like smell of the compressed gas. It is the scent of preparation, the aroma of a world that is always on the brink of a struggle. I find comfort in it, for it means we are still fighting, still holding the line against the shadows that press in from the outside. I return to the manifold, connecting the next pair of canisters with a practiced ease. The cadence of the work has become a part of me, a sequence of movements that I could perform even if the lamps were to fail. Each motion is a link in a chain, a necessary step toward the safety of those who fight for our future. I look up at the high window, where the stars are visible through the thick, leaded glass. They are distant and cold, indifferent to the struggles of those of us trapped within the walls. I wonder if the Titans look at the stars, or if they only see the prey that scurries before them in the half-light of the day. The pressure gauge flickers, a small bubble of air trapped in the line causing the needle to jump. I bleed the valve, a short burst of vapor clearing the blockage, the sound like a sharp intake of breath. The needle settles, resuming its steady climb toward the mark of completion. I spend the next hour in a state of quiet industry, the rows of filled canisters growing steadily longer. My hands are stained with the marks of my labor, the dark oil seeping into the creases of my skin. It is a badge of office, a sign that I have done my duty to the Corps and to the people we protect. As the moon begins its descent toward the horizon, the shadows in the room shift and lengthen, reaching out from the corners like the fingers of a giant. I am not afraid, for this room is my sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the outside is kept at bay by the order of the machine. I reach for the next canister, the cycle continuing as the world waits for the sun to rise. The last canister clicks into the rack, its metallic skin cool against my palm. I step back, wiping my fingers on a rag that has seen better seasons, the fabric stiff with the residue of a dozen different lubricants. The workbench is a mosaic of copper shavings and iron dust, reflecting the amber glow of the lantern overhead. Moving to the far wall, I unhook a leather harness, the straps weighted and weathered by the salt and sweat of many scouting missions. This leather came from the cattle of Wall Rose, cured and treated to withstand the violent jerks of a soldier swinging through the forest. It carries a faint, earthy scent, a reminder of the fields that lie beyond these stone fortifications. I lay the harness across the wooden table, the buckles clinking softly against the grain. One of the brass eyelets is frayed, the leather around it pulled thin by the immense tension of a high-speed maneuver. I pick up a curved needle and a length of waxed thread, the material resisting my first push as I start the repair. Each stitch is a slow, deliberate act of preservation. The needle passes through the hide with a muffled pop, a small note of resistance before the thread follows. I think of the soldier who wore this, someone who likely spent their days soaring between the branches of the giant trees, their life hanging by these very threads. The room is quiet, save for the occasional pop of the gas lamp as it consumes its fuel. The warmth of the lamp is a small comfort against the dampness that seeps from the masonry. These walls have stood for over a century, protecting us from the terrors outside, yet they feel as much like a cage as a shield. I reach for a small jar of tallow, dipping my thumb into the waxy substance. I rub it into the leather, the friction of my hand generating enough heat to melt the fat into the pores of the skin. The material softens under my touch, regaining the suppleness it needs to flex without snapping under pressure. To my left, the internal mechanism of a trigger assembly lies open, its gears exposed like the organs of a small clockwork animal. I use a fine brush to clear away the grit, the tiny bristles sweeping across the teeth of the cogs. A single grain of sand from the outlying districts could cause a jam, and a jam in mid-flight is often a death sentence. The complexity of the omnidirectional gear is a marvel of engineering, born from necessity and the desperate desire to reclaim our territory. We use the iron bamboo, a material found only in specific forest regions, to create the blades and the wire. It is light, yet stronger than any steel we can forge in the common kilns. I pick up a small vial of specialized oil, letting a single drop fall onto the central spindle. The liquid spreads across the metal, a shimmering film that ensures the gears will turn without friction. The tempo of my breath matches the slow expansion of the oil, a quiet pulse in the stillness of the workshop. Outside the small barred window, the evening wind whistles through the narrow alleys of the district. It carries the faint smell of wood smoke and the distant chime of a clock tower striking the hour. It is 4 in the morning, the time when the shadows are at their longest and the rest of the city is lost in dreams. I turn my attention to the wire spools, the thin strands of metal wound tightly around their drums. I run a gloved hand along the length of the wire, feeling for any kinks or fraying. The wire must be perfect, for it carries the full weight of a human being as they defy gravity itself. There is a certain gravity to this work, a burden that does not come from the metal or the leather. It is the responsibility of knowing that my hands are the last ones to touch this equipment before it goes into the field. If I fail here, in the quiet of the evening, a soldier may fail out there. In the heat of the sun, I find a small nick in the wire, a tiny flaw that could become a snap under the strain of a gas-powered launch. I mark the spool for replacement, setting it aside with a soft thud. We do not take risks with the lives of the Survey Corps, for they are the only ones brave enough to look beyond the horizon. The ambient warmth of the room seems to hum with the ghosts of past repairs. Thousands of harnesses have passed through this chamber, each one telling a story of a struggle we can barely comprehend. Some return covered in the green ichor of our enemies, while others do not return at all. I pick up a fresh spool, the metal gleaming in the dimness. It is cold to the touch, a stark contrast to the leather I was just handling. I move into the process of threading it into the drum, the wire coiling with a metallic hiss that echoes against the low ceiling. My mind drifts to the stories told by the veterans of the territory outside the walls. They speak of forests that stretch for miles and ruins of cities that existed before the Titans appeared. It is hard to imagine such a landscape when my entire existence is defined by these 3 concentric circles of stone. The spool is finally seated, the tension adjusted to the exact specifications required by the manual. I test the recoil, a sharp tug followed by the smooth retraction of the wire. The mechanism sings, a high-pitched note that vibrates through my arm and into my chest. I take a moment to rest my eyes, leaning back against the rough stone of the wall. The texture of the rock is uneven, a map of the labor that went into building this fortress. We are a people of stone and iron, forged in the fires of a storied conflict that never truly ended. The lanterns flicker, the flame dancing as a draft finds its way through the door. I adjust the wick, the light expanding to fill the room once more. There is still much to do before the first light of dawn touches the top of Wall Maria, and I find a strange peace in the remaining hours. I reach for the next harness, the cycle of repair and maintenance ready to start anew. The leather is cool, waiting for the warmth of my hands to bring it back to life. As I prepare the needle, I feel the steady flow of time, leading us toward a morning that promises both hope and hardship. The steel of the blades has a distinct cold scent, a sharp metallic tang that cuts through the smell of oil and old wood. I slide a fresh edge into the testing jig, listening for the telltale click of the locking mechanism. It is a precise measure of engineering, a marriage of folding steel and spring-loaded tension. Each blade is etched with the mark of the industrial city, a reminder of the furnaces that burn day and evening to keep us armed. These are not meant to last, designed instead to be spent, discarded like the lives of those who carry them into the fray. I run a finger along the flat of the metal, feeling the microscopic ridges left by the factory grinders. There is a bin in the corner, overflowing with shattered fragments of steel, the remnants of a previous expedition. They are jagged, twisted pieces of metal that once held the hope of humanity in their edges. Now they are merely scrap, waiting to be melted down and forged into something new, something whole. I pick up a handle, the grip worn smooth by the palm of a soldier whose name I do not know. The trigger moves with a faint, oily resistance, a sign that the internal springs are still strong. It is a strange thing to hold the instrument of another person's survival in my hands, feeling the phantom pressure of their grip. The gas canisters are stacked like cordwood against the far wall, their iron shells cool and unyielding. I check the pressure gauges, watching the needles hover over the marks of safety. A leak in one of these would be a silent death, a slow drain of the lifeblood that allows a scout to defy the weight of the earth. I use a small wrench to tighten the valve assembly, the metal groaning softly under the force. The atmosphere in the room is thick with the scent of pressurized gas, a sharp, biting aroma that keeps my senses alert. It is a necessary hazard, part of the price we pay for the ability to fly through the forest canopy. Outside, the wind brushes against the stone exterior of the tower, a low moan that sounds like a distant choir. The fortress is old, its foundations sunk deep into the soil of the territory we still claim as ours. Within these walls we are safe, but it is a fragile safety, held together by bolts and leather straps. I find a spool of wire that has become tangled, a chaotic nest of silver threads that reflects the flickering lantern light. I begin the slow process of unraveling it, my fingers moving with a practiced tempo. Each loop must be cleared, each knot undone, until the line is straight and true once more. There is a meditative quality to this labor, a way to quiet the mind while the body remains occupied. The pulse of the work is steady, a constant beat that drowns out the anxieties of the coming morning. I focus on the wire, on the way it catches the light, a shimmering path through the dimness. I think of the horses in the stables below, their quiet breathing, a mirror to the stillness of this room. They too are part of the machine, the living engines that carry the equipment, and the soldiers into the unknown. We all have our roles, our small parts to play in the grand, tragic drama of our species. A small pile of leather shavings has gathered at my feet, the byproduct of trimming a new set of thigh straps. The material is tough, harvested from the cattle that graze in the safety of wall rows. It has a rich, earthy smell, a grounding influence in a room filled with the scent of cold iron. I reach for a jar of grease, the lid turning with a gritty scrape. The substance is thick and black, designed to withstand the heat of the gas discharge. I apply it to the gears of the reel, my brush moving in slow, deliberate strokes to ensure every tooth is coated. The mechanism moves more freely now, the friction replaced by a smooth, gliding motion. It is a small victory, a tiny improvement in a setting that often feels like it is falling apart. I take pride in these moments, in the knowledge that this gear will not fail when it is needed most. I look at the map, pinned to the wooden pillar, the ink fading at the edges. It shows the path of the last scouting mission, the lines tracing a route through the ruined towns and the dense woods. Each mark represents a decision, a moment of courage, or a desperate retreat. The ink is darker where the commander made his notes, the pressure of the pen leaving indentations in the paper. It is a map of hope and of loss, a record of our attempts to reclaim what was taken from us. I turn away, returning my attention to the physical reality of the harness on my bench. The buckles are made of brass, their golden hue dulled by a layer of tarnish. I use a polishing cloth to bring back the shine, the metal warming under the friction of my hand. It is a cosmetic detail, perhaps, but there is value in maintaining the dignity of the equipment. A soldier who takes care of their gear is a soldier who respects the life they lead. I want them to see their reflection in the brass, to see a person who is prepared for whatever the day may bring. The shine returns, a bright spot in the half-light of the workshop. I hear the distant chime of a bell marking the passage of another hour in the quiet hours. The noise carries through the stone corridors, a lonely note that fades into the silence. I am alone in this wing of the barracks, the only one awake to hear the heartbeat of the fortress. I pick up a needle and a length of waxed thread, preparing to reinforce a seam that starts to fray. The leather is resistant, requiring a steady push to drive the point through. I feel the resistance, the stubborn strength of the material that protects the wearer from the bite of the straps. Each stitch is a promise, a tiny anchor that holds the harness together against the forces of gravity and motion. I pull the thread tight, the knot sinking into the exterior of the leather. The work is nearly finished for this piece, and I set it aside to move toward the next task. The shadows on the wall shift as the lantern flickers, dancing in a way that makes the room feel alive. The tools hanging on their hooks cast long, distorted shapes like the fingers of some subterranean giant. I adjust the flame, the light steadying once more, casting a warm glow over the workbench. I find a small pouch of spare parts, the tiny screws and washers clinking together like coins. I sort them into their respective trays, their different sizes and shapes, a testament to the complexity of the gear. It is a puzzle of iron and brass, a system that requires every piece to be in its perfect place. My hands are stained with the marks of the shift, the oil and the dust forming a map of my labor. I do not mind the grime, for it is a sign of work well done, of a night spent in service to a cause. I wipe my palms on my apron, the fabric rough and comforting against my skin. The silence of the workshop is not empty, but filled with the ghosts of the day's noise. I can almost hear the shouting of the recruits, the clatter of boots on the cobblestones, the roar of the gas vents. In the quiet hours, these memories are softened, turned into a gentle murmur that accompanies my movements. I reach for a whetstone, the face of it worn into a shallow curve from years of use. I pour a few drops of oil onto it, the liquid spreading in a dark, shimmering pool. I pick up a blade that has lost its edge, the metal dull and grey in the lamplight. The first pass of the blade against the stone produces a low, rasping note, a tone that vibrates through the bones of my hand. I move the steel in a slow circular motion, the friction generating a faint warmth. With each stroke, the edge becomes finer, the dullness giving way to a lethal sharpness. It is a delicate balance, to sharpen the steel without making it brittle. I watch the way the light catches, the new edge, a thin line of brilliance that promises to cut through the thickest hide. This is the weapon that gives us a chance, the only thing that can reach the nape of the neck. I think of the stories of the first scouts, the ones who went out with nothing but horses and swords. They had no gear, no gas, no way to escape the reach of the giants. Their courage was a different kind of fire, a raw and desperate thing that paved the way for the technology I hold now. We have come so far, and yet we are still so small, huddled behind our walls of stone. But in this room with these tools, I feel a sense of power, a way to contribute to the survival of the whole. I am the caretaker of the wings of freedom, the one who ensures they do not falter. I set the sharpened blade into its sheath, the metal sliding home with a satisfying ring. The task is complete, and I feel the weight of the evening moving to lift the first hints of grey appearing in the sky outside. The work continues, a bridge between the shadows and the light that is to come. I turn my attention to the row of pressurized canisters, lined up like silver soldiers along the back wall. Each one is a cylinder of cold iron forged in the heat of the industrial district. They are chilled to the touch now, but they hold the power of 100 men. I check the seals one by one, ensuring the gaskets are snug and secure. A single leak, a tiny hiss of escaping gas, could mean the difference between life and death in the field. I use a small brush to apply a thin layer of soapy water to the valves. I watch for bubbles, for any sign of a breach in the metal. The room is quiet, save for the low murmur of the ventilation and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I find a faulty valve on the 14th canister, a minute crack in the brass fitting. I set it aside for repair its mass, a reminder of the responsibility I carry. These tools are the only thing that keeps us from being mere prey. I think of the engineers who designed this system, the brilliant minds who found a way to harness the wind. It is a marvel of engineering, a blend of science and desperation. I pick up a wrench, the metal cool, against my palm, and start the task of replacing the seal. The threads of the screw are fine and precise, requiring a steady hand and a patient mind. I turn the tool with a slow, deliberate motion, feeling the resistance of the iron. It is a meditative task, one that allows my thoughts to wander through the history of our people. We have lived in the shadow of the walls for over 100 years, forgetting what it means to be free. But here, in this workshop, I am working towards that freedom, one bolt at a time. The metal groans a faint protest as the new seal is pressed into place. I move to the bench where the harnesses are laid out, like the flayed skin of some great beast. The leather is thick, cured with oils to keep it supple and strong. I run my fingers along the seams, feeling for any frayed threads or weakened spots. These straps must hold the mass of a soldier as they swing through the forest. The tension is immense, a constant pull that tests the limits of the material. I find a spot where the leather has started to thin, near the hip buckle. It is a small defect, but under pressure it could snap, sending a scout tumbling into the jaws of a giant. I reach for my awl, the wooden handle smooth and familiar in my grip. I pierce the leather, the noise of the needle passing through the hide, a sharp, clean note. I thread the waxed cord through the holes, pulling it tight, with a steady effort. Each stitch is a promise, a vow of safety for the one who will wear this. I think of the cattle that provided this leather, a sacrifice made for our defense. Everything we have is borrowed from the land, a debt we repay with our labor and our lives. The lamp flickers, casting long, dancing shadows across the workbench. I pause for a moment to trim the wick, the flame jumping as I adjust the glass chimney. The warmth of the fire is a small comfort in the chill of the workshop. I return to my work, the needle moving in a steady pattern across the leather face. The smell of the wax and the oil is pungent and grounding. It is the scent of the Survey Corps, the aroma of industry and survival. I tie off the thread with a double knot, ensuring it will never come undone. I pick up a trigger assembly, the mechanism small and intricate, like the inner workings of a clock. It is made of steel and brass, a combination of strength and precision. I test the pull of the trigger, the movement smooth and responsive. It must be perfect, for a split second of hesitation can be fatal. I apply a drop of oil to the pivot point, the liquid disappearing into the joint. I wipe away the excess with a clean cloth, the metal gleaming in the lamplight. This is the heart of the gear, the link between the soldier and the machine. It is a delicate thing, yet it must withstand the harshest of conditions. I think of the soldiers who use these triggers, the young men and women who risk everything. They are brave in a way I can only imagine facing the monsters that lurk beyond the walls. I am just a mechanic, a worker in the shadows, but I am part of their journey. My hands are the ones that ensure their weapons do not fail them. The silence of the workshop is broken by the distant chime of a clock striking the hour. It is 3 in the morning, the time when the world is most still. I take a deep breath, the atmosphere in the room tasting of metal and old wood. I feel a sense of peace in this solitary labor, a connection to the pulse of the city. I reach for a box of spare parts, the wooden lid creaking as I open it. Inside are hundreds of tiny springs and gears, each one a piece of a larger whole. I sort through them looking for a specific spring for the wire reel. It is a small coiled thing, but it provides the tension needed to retract the cable. I find the spring, its surface bright and untarnished. I carefully insert it into the reel, using a pair of tweezers to guide it into place. The spring snaps into position with a faint click, a tone of completion. I test the reel, the wire spinning with a low hum as it winds and unwinds. The wire is made of a special alloy, strong enough to support a horse, yet flexible enough to coil. It is a secret of the trade, a formula known only to the master smiths. I check the length of the cable, looking for any kinks or signs of wear. A frayed wire is a death sentence, a silent threat that must be eliminated. I run a cloth along the length of the wire, the metal smooth and cold. I feel the strength of the alloy, the way it resists being bent. It is a testament to our ingenuity, a way to fight back against the giants. We are no longer just cattle waiting for the slaughter. We are hunters with the power to fly. I look at the map pinned to the wall, the edges yellowed with age. It shows the territory we have lost, the cities and villages now overrun by the Titans. It is a grim reminder of the stakes of our struggle, but there are also marks of our victories, the places where we have reclaimed our land. I see the names of the gates: Shiganshina, Trost, Karanis. Each one represents a battle fought, a sacrifice made. I think of the scouts who never returned, their names etched into the stones of the wall. Their memory is what drives us to keep fighting, to keep building, to keep repairing. I pick up a file and start to smooth the edges of a metal plate. The rasping noise is a constant companion, a measure of my progress. I work with a steady pace, not rushing, but not lingering. There is much to be done, and the quiet hours are the best time for focus. The metal shavings fall like silver snow onto the floor beneath my bench. I will sweep them up later and return them to the forge. Nothing is wasted in this workshop, for resources are scarce and every scrap is precious. We are a people who have learned to live with very little, making the most of what we have. I think of the iron mines deep beneath the earth where the ore is extracted. It is a dangerous job working in the dimness with the constant threat of a cave-in. The miners are the unsung heroes of our society, providing the raw materials for our survival. Their labor is the foundation upon which our walls are built. I set the file aside and examine my work, the metal plate, now smooth and even. I fit it onto the gear, the pieces sliding together with a perfect alignment. It is a satisfying feeling to see the machine coming back to life. I tighten the bolts one by one, ensuring the assembly is solid and secure. The lamplight reflects off the polished surface of the gear, a bright spot in the murk. I feel a sense of pride in my craft, a knowledge that I am doing my part. I am not a soldier. I do not face the Titans face to face. But I am the one who gives the soldiers the tools they need to survive. I reach for a mug of cold tea, the liquid bitter and refreshing. It has been sitting on the bench for hours, but I do not mind. It wakes me up, clearing the fog from my mind. I take a slow sip, savoring the taste of the herbs. It is a small luxury, a moment of stillness in the midst of my work. The workshop is a place of stories, of the gear that has seen 100 battles. I look at a dented canister, wondering what happened to the scout who carried it. Did they survive, or did they fall in the line of duty? The metal cannot speak, but it carries the scars of its history. I run my hand over the dent, feeling the force that caused it. It must have been a powerful blow, perhaps from a Titan's hand or a fall against a stone. I will hammer it out, making the metal smooth once again. It is a small act of restoration, a way to heal the wounds of war. I pick up a hammer, the weighted head balanced and true. I strike the metal with a series of light, controlled blows. The noise of the hammer against the iron is a bright, ringing note. I work carefully, watching as the dent slowly disappears. It is a slow process, but I have the time and the patience. The metal is stubborn, but eventually it yields to the pressure of the hammer. I finish the work with a fine-grained stone, polishing the surface until the scar is gone. The canister is now as good as new, ready to be filled with gas once again. I set it back on the rack with the others. I look at the clock again, the hands moving with a slow, inevitable pace. The shift is far from over, and there are still many pieces of gear to be repaired. I feel a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going, even when my body is tired. The work is my contribution to the survival of humanity. I think of the walls, the three great circles of stone that protect us. They are our sanctuary and our prison, a constant presence in our lives. We look up at them every day, wondering what lies on the other side. Some see them as a blessing, others as a curse, but for me they are a challenge. I move to the corner where the spare blades are stored in wooden crates. They are wrapped in oilcloth to prevent rust and kept in a specific order. I count them, ensuring we have enough for the next expedition. The blades are the most consumed resource of the Survey Corps, breaking and dulling with every encounter. I pick up a bundle of the steel strips, the metal cold and substantial. They are dense but well balanced, designed to be replaced in an instant. I check the edges for any chips or imperfections. A single flaw can cause the blade to shatter when it hits the bone. I am the gatekeeper of the steel, the one who decides what is fit for use. I find a blade with a small notch in the center. I set it aside for the forge to be melted down and recast. We cannot afford to take any risks with the equipment. Every piece must be in perfect condition, for the lives of the scouts depend on it. I wrap the remaining blades back in the oilcloth. The draft in the room shifts, bringing with it the scent of the stables. I can hear the horses stirring in their stalls, the low whinny of an animal in the night. They are our companions in this struggle, as essential as the gear we carry. I think of the bond between a scout and their horse, a trust that is forged in the heat of battle. I return to my bench, the lamplight casting. A warm glow over the tools. I pick up a small brush and begin to clean the dust from a pulley. The work is never finished, a cycle of repair and maintenance. But as I work, I feel a sense of moving forward, a bridge between the shadows and the light that is to come. The pulley wheel spins freely now. The grit and grime of the last scouting mission finally cleared away. I apply a drop of refined oil to the axle, watching the liquid seep into the tiny gaps. It is a quiet victory, a small piece of a larger machine restored to its purpose. The lamp flickers just for a moment as a stray breeze finds its way through the stone masonry. I reach out to steady the glass chimney, feeling the warmth of the flame against my calloused palm. The atmosphere in here is still, save for the low murmur of the wind outside these thick walls. I pick up a trigger assembly, the metal cold and silver in the low light. These grips are the most delicate part of the entire apparatus. They must respond to a feather-light touch, yet remain sturdy under the strain of high-speed maneuvers. I check the tension of the internal springs, listening for the faint click that signals a proper engagement. It is a delicate balance between grace and brute force. Each component must work in perfect harmony for the scout to survive the dance with the giants. Next, I reach for a length of dense leather, the straps that bind, the gear to the body. They are worn and frayed in places, the result of countless hours spent swinging through the forest canopies. I take a tin of grease and a soft cloth, preparing to condition the tired hide. The grease is thick and smells of animal fat and beeswax. I rub it into the leather with circular motions, feeling the material soften under my fingers. It is a meditative task, one that requires little thought, but much care. The leather absorbs the grease, turning a deeper shade of brown. It becomes supple once more, ready to withstand the tension of the wires and the weight of the gas canisters. I check the buckles for any signs of rust or structural weakness. A single failed buckle could mean a fall from a great height. I replace a copper rivet that has started to pull away, hammering it flat with a small, precise mallet. The noise is sharp but brief, quickly swallowed by the silence of the room. I look toward the window, a narrow slit in the masonry. Beyond the glass, the landscape of Wall Rose is draped in shadow. The trees are silhouettes against the slightly paler sky, and the stars are hidden behind a veil of clouds. The evening is quiet, a rare peace that we all cherish in these moments. It is easy to forget the terror that waits beyond the borders of our civilization. But the gear on my bench is a constant reminder of the reality we face every day. I turn my attention to the pressure gauges, the small dials that monitor the gas flow. They are precise instruments crafted with a level of detail that is rare in this age. I use a tiny screwdriver to calibrate the needles, ensuring they sit exactly at the 0 mark. The glass faces are clear and bright, reflecting the lamplight like miniature moons. I wipe away a smudge of grease from one of them with a clean corner of my apron. There is a satisfaction in making things right, in bringing order to the chaos of wear and tear. A soft patter turns into a steady rain on the roof. I listen to the cadence of the water against the stone, a natural melody that contrasts with the metallic clatter of my tools. The dampness brings a chill that seeps through the cracks in the floorboards. I pull my wool coat tighter around my shoulders and continue my work. The grappling hooks are next on the list, their three-pronged shapes lying in a heap like the talons of some great bird. They are scarred and chipped from striking against the stone of the walls. I use a file to sharpen the points, the rasping noise filling the small space. Each stroke removes a tiny shaving of steel, revealing the bright metal beneath the tarnish. I want them to bite deep and hold fast when the scout fires them into the masonry. I test the sharpness with my thumb, feeling the edge, catch on the skin. It is enough. I set the hooks aside and reach for my logbook, a thick volume with yellowed pages. I need to record the repairs I have made for the quartermaster's records. The ink is dark and flows easily from the tip of my quill. I write in a slow, deliberate hand, listing each item and the work performed. It is a history of sorts, a record of the gear that has seen battle and lived to tell the tale. The script is neat, a series of loops and lines that fill the empty space. I blow on the ink to dry it, the breath a small cloud in the cool atmosphere. The logbook is a testament to the endurance of the Survey Corps, a ledger of survival. I take a sip of my tea, which has gone cold in the mug. It is bitter and strong, but it helps to keep the fatigue at bay. The shift is long, but I do not mind the solitude of the workshop. I look at the rack of finished gear, the leather gleaming and the metal shining. It is a sight that brings a sense of accomplishment. Each piece is ready for the next expedition, for the next time we venture out into the unknown. The weight of the responsibility is always there, a quiet pressure in the back of my mind. But I have done my part, and I have done it well. The scouts can trust in their equipment, and that is all I can ask for. I stand up and stretch my cramped muscles, feeling the joints in my back pop. The room is still, the only noise, the occasional drip of rain from the eaves. I walk to the door and peer out into the darkened hallway. The barracks are quiet, the soldiers sleeping before the early morning drills. I return to my bench and pick up the last item on the list, a canister that needs its valve replaced. The work goes on, a steady tempo in the heart of the night. The valve is stubborn, resisting my efforts to unscrew it. I apply more pressure, the muscles in my arms tensing with the effort. Finally it gives way with a sharp crack that echoes in the stillness as I prepare to fit the new seal. It's with a satisfying snugness as I tighten the brass collar. I can no longer smell the faint, sharp scent of gas, which tells me the leak is finally sealed. These canisters are the lifeblood of the scouts, providing the pressure needed to soar above the Titans. Without them, a soldier is merely a person, trapped on the ground, waiting for the end. I place the canister back into the padded rack with the others, their metal bodies cold to the touch. The sharpening station is my next destination, a corner of the room dominated by a large foot-pedal grindstone. A bucket of water sits beneath it, the face of it reflecting the flickering light of the oil lamp. I take a handful of the broken blade fragments from the scrap bin and set them aside for the furnace. Then I reach for a fresh bundle of the replaceable blades, still wrapped in their protective paper. They are long, thin, and remarkably flexible, yet strong enough to slice through the toughest hide. I press my foot against the wooden pedal, and the stone starts to rotate with a low, grinding note. It is a familiar noise, one that has accompanied many of my late hours in this workshop. I dip the first blade into the water and then hold it against the spinning surface at a precise angle. A shower of sparks, orange and bright, dances across my apron before fading into the shadows. The friction creates a warmth that radiates up through my gloves, a small comfort against the evening chill. Each blade requires 3 passes on each side to ensure the edge is keen enough for the field. I move with a steady, practiced tempo, the repetition allowing my mind to drift through the memories of the day. I think of the young recruits who will carry these weapons, their hands perhaps trembling as they face the unknown. It is my duty to ensure their steel does not fail them when their lives depend upon a single clean strike. The metal shimmers under the lamp, a silver line of lethal precision. I finish the first dozen and wipe them down with an oiled cloth to prevent any rust from forming in the damp atmosphere. The oil is thick and smells of pine and minerals, a scent that always reminds me of the industrial city. We receive our shipments of ultra-hard steel from the specialized foundries, located deep within the inner walls. It is a rare material, forged in secret and distributed sparingly to those who risk everything for our survival. I stack the finished blades into a wooden crate, their edges clicking together like a deck of cards. My attention turns to a pile of leather straps that have been brought in for reinforcement. They belong to the thigh harnesses, the most complex part of the entire maneuvering system. The leather is worn and stained with salt and dirt from hours of intense physical exertion. I examine the stitching, looking for any signs of fraying or weakness that could lead to a catastrophic failure. Even a single loose thread can be the difference between a successful escape and a tragic fall. I pick up a heavy curved needle and a spool of waxed thread to begin the repairs. The needle is sharp and requires a considerable amount of force to push through the multiple layers of hide. I use a small metal thimble to protect my finger as I drive the point into the material. The thread is strong and coated in beeswax to help it glide through the holes and resist the elements. I follow the original stitch pattern, ensuring the new work is as durable as the old. As I work, I listen to the wind whistling through the cracks in the stone masonry. It is a lonely sound, one that speaks of the vast empty spaces that lie beyond the safety of the walls. I wonder what it is like to stand on top of the 50-meter barricade and look out at the world that was once ours. For now, my place is here, in the dimness of the basement, tending to the tools of those who are much braver than I. The needle clicks against the thimble, a small rhythmic pulse in the quiet. I set the harness aside and reach for a small wooden box that sits on the corner of my workbench. Inside are the trigger mechanisms, the intricate controls that allow a scout to fire their hooks and reel themselves through the air. They are delicate instruments filled with small gears and springs that must be kept perfectly clean. I use a fine brush to whisk away any dust or grit that has accumulated inside the housing. The brass components glow softly in the amber light of the lantern. I apply a single drop of fine machine oil to each of the pivot points using a glass dropper. The oil spreads in a thin iridescent film, coating the metal and ensuring a smooth operation. I test the trigger, feeling the spring tension against my palm as it snaps back into place. It is a crisp, responsive action, exactly what is needed for the split-second decisions of combat. I close the box and place it on the shelf with the other completed assemblies. There is a pile of discarded gear in the corner, items that are beyond any hope of repair. I sift through it, looking for any parts that can still be salvaged for future use. I find a buckle that is still intact and a length of wire that has not been kinked. These small pieces are precious, as resources are always in short supply, this far from the center. I place the salvaged items in a small tin, their metallic clatter breaking the silence of the room. At the bottom of the scrap pile, I find a small hand-carved wooden charm, shaped like a bird. It must have been attached to a scout's gear, a lucky token to bring them home safely. It is charred on one side and the wood is splintered, telling a story of a struggle that I can only imagine. I hold it in my palm for a long moment, feeling the weight of the history it carries. I cannot bring myself to throw it away, so I place it on the windowsill instead. I move to the back of the workshop where the large spare gas tanks are stored. They are stacked like cordwood against the damp stone wall, their grey surfaces cold and uninviting. I check the pressure gauges on each one, ensuring they are within the safe operating parameters. The needles on the dials are steady, pointing to the green zones that indicate a full charge. It is a relief to see that our reserves are still plentiful for the next mission. I notice a small patch of dampness on the floor near the base of the storage rack. It seems the condensation from the cold metal is dripping down and pooling on the stones. I take a dry mop and soak up the water to prevent anyone from slipping in the shadows. The stone is cold through the soles of my boots, and I can feel the chill of the earth seeping into the room. It is a reminder that we are underground, sheltered from the world by layers of rock and soil. I return to my desk and pick up the logbook once again to record the final tasks of the evening. My hand is steady as I write down the number of blades sharpened and the harnesses repaired. I use the last of the ink in the well, the black fluid staining the paper in neat, elegant strokes. The book is nearly full, its pages a testament to the endless cycle of maintenance and repair. I close the volume and place it in the center of the desk, ready for the morning shift. I take a final look around the workshop, making sure everything is in its proper place. The tools are cleaned and hung on their pegs, the workbench is cleared of any debris, and the lamps are trimmed. There is a sense of order and purpose in the room, a quiet defiance against the chaos that exists outside. I have done what I can to prepare the scouts for their journey, and now it is time for me to rest. The shadows seem to lengthen as the oil in the lamps begins to run low. I walk to the window and look out at the small patch of sky that is visible through the iron bars. The stars are bright and distant, flickering in the cold, clear atmosphere of the highlands. It is a beautiful sight, one that reminds me of why we continue to fight and work in the dimness. There is a world out there that is waiting for us to reclaim it, a place of beauty and freedom. I take a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs and clearing my head. I turn away from the window and head toward the door, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The barracks are still quiet. The only sound, the distant call of a night bird in the woods. I feel a sense of peace as I walk, a quiet satisfaction in a job well done. The work is never truly finished, but for now I have done enough, and the gear is ready. I reach the end of the corridor and prepare to climb the stairs to the surface. As I ascend, the air becomes warmer, and the scent of wood smoke from the barracks hearth reaches my nose. It is a welcoming smell, one that speaks of comfort and the companionship of my fellow workers. I look forward to a few hours of sleep before the sun rises and the cycle begins all over again. The stone steps are worn, smooth by the passage of countless feet over many years. I place my hand on the iron railing and feel the cold metal beneath my palm. I reach the top of the stairs and step out into the main hall, where a single guttering torch provides a flickering light. The building is old and full of memories, a place that has seen much sorrow but also much hope. I pause for a moment to listen to the silence of the sleeping fortress before continuing on toward my quarters. The weight of the day finally begins to lift as I think about the quiet hours that still lie ahead. The wooden door to my quarters feels cool against my fingertips as I reach for the handle. It is a simple, sturdy thing made of thick oak that has stood for many decades within these stone walls. I turn the iron key in the lock, hearing the mechanical click echo through the quiet hall with a sharp, clean resonance. It is a familiar, comforting note that signals the true end of my long labors for this evening. Inside, the space is small, but it is mine, a sanctuary of sorts, hidden away within the fortress. I do not light a lamp, immediately allowing my eyes to adjust to the silver glow of the moon. It spills across the floor in long rectangular patches, illuminating the fine dust that dances in the stillness. The atmosphere here is different from the workshop, smelling of dried lavender and old parchment, and the faint, lingering scent of cedarwood. I reach up to unfasten the straps of my leather vest, feeling the release of tension in my shoulders. The material is stiff from years of use, but it has shaped itself to my frame over 1,000 long shifts. I set it carefully upon the wooden stool, smoothing out the creases with a slow, practiced hand. Every piece of equipment tells a story, even the clothes we wear to do our work in the dimness. My boots come off next, the laces untying with a soft sliding friction as they pull through the eyelets. I place them side by side beneath the bed, their soles worn from miles of walking on cold stone and damp soil. The relief of being barefoot on the floor is a small but profound pleasure that I look forward to every night. I can feel the texture of the wood grain beneath my soles, grounded and real in the fading light. I move toward the wash basin, where the water sits still and clear in the ceramic bowl. I dip my hands in, the chill of it shocking my skin into a brief, sharp awareness of the present moment. It washes away the grease, the metal shavings, and the fatigue of the shift in a single cooling motion. I press the damp cloth to my face, letting the moisture soak into my pores and calm my wandering thoughts. The fortress is never truly silent, but at this hour the noises are distant and muffled by the thickness of the masonry. I can hear the wind brushing against the eaves, a low, mournful whistle that speaks of the open plains beyond the walls. Somewhere far below, a gate creaks on its iron hinges, a reminder of the watchmen who remain awake in the murk. Their vigilance allows us this brief window of necessary peace before the sun makes its return. I walk to the window and lean against the frame, looking out at the silhouette of the great walls. They stand like giants against the starlit sky, their tops lost in the high, thin haze of the highlands. It is hard to imagine the scale of them, even after all these years living and working in their constant shadow. They are both a cage and a shield, a paradox that we live with every single day of our lives. A single bird, perhaps a hawk or an owl, glides across the face of the moon with effortless grace. It moves with a freedom that is enviable, a silent hunter, in the velvet dimness of the late hour. I watch it until it vanishes into the trees that line the edge of the training grounds far below. The trees are dark and motionless, their leaves waiting for the first breath of the morning breeze to stir them. The gear I repaired today will soon be out there, moving through those very branches in the hands of the scouts. I think of them, their faces lit by the campfire as they prepare for the unknown and the dangerous. My work is a small part of a much larger machine, a gear that must turn so the rest can function. There is a quiet pride in that knowledge, a sense of belonging to something greater than my own small life. I turn away from the view and approach my bed, the wool blankets, looking soft and inviting in the half-light. I pull back the covers, revealing the plain white sheets, that smell of sun and wind from the laundry lines. It is a modest place to rest, but to me it feels like a luxury after a day of labor. I sit on the edge for a moment, letting my eyes wander over the few possessions I keep in this room. A small carved wooden figure sits on the nightstand, its features smoothed by years of handling and care. It is a reminder of home, of a place that exists now only in my memory and my dreams. I touch it briefly, the wood feeling warm and familiar under the pad of my thumb. These small tokens are what keep us anchored to our humanity amidst the struggle and the toil. The candle on the desk is nearly spent, its wick drowning in a pool of melted, translucent wax. I lean forward and blow it out, watching the thin trail of smoke rise and dissipate into the rafters. The shadow that follows is not empty, but full of the soft blue light of the distant stars. It fills the room, softening the hard edges of the furniture and the stone walls until they seem to blur. I lie down, the mattress yielding to my weighted frame with a gentle rhythmic creak of the frame. I stretch my limbs out, feeling the muscles finally move into a state of total and complete release. The exhaustion is a presence now, a soft blanket that presses upon my eyelids with a gentle force. I welcome it, letting the tension of the day drain away into the straw and the fabric. My thoughts drift back to the workshop, the gleam of the blades and the pungent smell of the oil. I can almost feel the phantom pulse of the sharpening stone against my palms as I drift. It is a meditative memory, one that helps to bridge the gap between wakefulness and the deep sleep. The work is done, the ledger is closed, and for now, that is more than enough. The heartbeat of the fortress is slow and steady, a pulse that I have learned to trust over the years. It is the cadence of 1,000 souls breathing in unison as they wait for the coming dawn. We are all bound by the same purpose, the same hope for a future that lies beyond these stones. In the quiet, that connection feels more tangible than ever, a thread that runs through all of us. I close my eyes and listen to the pulse of my own breath as it slows and deepens. Each inhalation is steady, filling my chest with the cool evening atmosphere of the high room. The world outside, with all its dangers and its measureless, unfolding mysteries, feels very far away tonight. Here, in this small room, there is only the present and the peace of the quiet moment. The shadows in the corner seem to shift as the moon moves across the vast and silent sky. They are long and thin, like the fingers of a dream, reaching out to touch the edges of my mind. I do not fear them, for they are the shadows of a home I have helped to build. They are the quiet witnesses to the life I have chosen and the work I have done. A distant bell tolls once, marking the change of the guard on the outer perimeter of the wall. It is a silver note that hangs in the stillness for a long time before fading into the murk. I imagine the new sentries stepping into their posts, their eyes searching the dark horizon for any sign. I offer them a silent thanks as I drift further into the haze of a deep sleep. The blankets are warm, and the pillow is soft beneath my head as I turn onto my side. I can feel the sleep coming for me now, a gentle tide that rises to meet me in the dark. It is a welcome return to the stillness, a chance to renew the spirit for the challenges of tomorrow. Tomorrow will bring its own labors, its own repairs, and its own stories to be written. But those are for tomorrow and for now. The only task is to rest and to dream. The last thing I see before the dark takes hold is the faint glimmer of the moon on the basin. It is a small, perfect circle of light, reflecting the infinite in a simple ceramic bowl. I let out one final long sigh and let the current of the evening carry me away. The gear is ready, the room is still, and the rest is finally earned. Thank you for spending this evening with me. Until next time on Canon and Calm, sleep well.